You all have a file in front of you, so I think I will leave it to Greg to educate and wow us. And welcome. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Janet. I'm honored to be here tonight. This is just great. As some of you know, this presentation has actually been in the works for quite some time. In fact, you may recall, Janet, I think about a year ago, I emailed you and I said, I don't think this is a good idea. Maybe we should cancel this, because I kept thinking to myself, I could talk about networking, or I could talk about how to sell yourself, or I could talk about LinkedIn, and actually a lot of those things I will talk about tonight, but I kept thinking, you've heard all this before, you don't need to hear it from me. And Janet very graciously said, well, no, we would like you to come because you can offer a different perspective. So I'm really honored to be here tonight. Thank you all very much. Before I go any further, I also want to say hello to everybody who is watching us on video tonight. We're here at the Courtyard Marriott Hotel in Hamilton, Ontario, and this is the Association of Administrative Assistants Hamilton Branch. It's May 15th, 2013, so we're delighted to have you watching us on video as well. So let me get to this presentation. I'm going to make it interactive, and I hope this thing works all right. Oh, here we go. Okay, here's an overview of what we're going to talk about during this presentation, what I want to talk to all of you about. First of all, we're going to talk about why do we network, because one of the things I've learned over the years is that it's important to define your terms. So let's look at why we network. After that, we're going to talk about some definitions of networking. What do we mean by networking? Because one of the things I remember from when I did my Master of Library Science at U of T is that it's important to define your terms. So I think it's essential that we should talk about what do we mean by networking. There are any number of possibilities, any number of definitions, so I'm going to take a few minutes to explore all that with you. Personal branding, I'm sure, is something you've all heard about. It's a really hot subject these days. It's in marketing and in all sorts of other areas, and that does have a role in networking, so I want to take a couple of minutes tonight to talk about that. LinkedIn. How many people here are on LinkedIn? Probably everybody. Okay. LinkedIn I think is a very important part of networking. So is Facebook, Twitter, all the other social media that's out there. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about that tonight as well. Then I'll have some final comments for all of you, and then if we have time, I'd like to open it up for a question and answer session, because maybe I will have stirred some things in all of you, and we can have a sort of an open-ended discussion about networking and what it means, not just to me, but more importantly to all of you who are here tonight. So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to finish off with some thank yous and some acknowledgments, just to talk about some people who have influenced me in putting this presentation together. So now that we've had our overview, let's get started. Finally I'm going to talk about how you can find me as well, so contact information. So let's talk about why do we network. So let me open it up for all of you, because I want to make this interactive. You're going to be bored if you just sit there and listen to me for the next, say, 25 minutes or half hour or so. That's not a very pleasant way to spend an evening. We've all been at presentations like that, and I don't want this one to be one of them. So let me throw it out here for all of you in the room tonight. Why do you think we should network with each other? Give me some ideas here, just a couple. Anybody? Pardon?
We learn.
We learn, okay. Anybody else? Yes?
To exchange practical information.
Yeah. One more? Anybody else? Yeah.
Potential job opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. I like those. Those are very good. I'm going to give you some of my ideas about why I think we should network. First of all, you're going to build some new business and professional relationships, and those are things that can benefit you both in the short and long term. Next, it'll help you achieve your corporate and personal goals and objectives. Third, you can learn new things and broaden your horizons. Fourth, don't reinvent the wheel. Networking lets you use the experiences of others to look at something in a new way. And fifth, everyone has information and knowledge you can share with others, and networking can help you do that effectively. And last, this is kind of a fun one, you can make some new friends, have some fun. Networking doesn't have to be work. It can be social, it can be fun too. I'm going to look at that a little more later on tonight as well. Now, let's look at some definitions of networking, and again, I'm going to ask all of you in the room to chime in here. What do we mean by networking? Anybody want to give me a definition of networking? What does it mean to you? Anybody? Yes?
interacting with other people.
Okay, great, I like that, interacting with others. Anybody else?
I think joining associations that have something in common.
Yeah, certainly, especially a group like yours too. Yeah, I think that's great. One more. Anybody else have a definition of networking they want to share? Okay, well then we'll move along. I'm going to give you some of my definitions of networking. This was one I found online at dictionary.com. A supportive system of sharing information and services among individuals and groups having a common interest. Let me give you another one to think about. This is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The exchange or information of services among individuals, groups, or institutions, specifically the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business. And I have one more for you. Actually, here's another one. This is from the Encarta Dictionary. The gathering of acquaintances or contacts, building up or maintaining of informal relationships, especially with people whose friendships could bring advantages such as jobs or business opportunities. I think all of you kind of mentioned those when I canvassed the room. I'm probably going to give you my own definition. Mine is a little simpler, but here's how I define networking. People helping people so that we all win. I think that's a very simple definition. I hope that rings with all of you here in the room and all of you out there watching on video. That's how I would describe what networking is. Now, we're going to have a little bit of fun here. I'll bet you didn't know that you could network in Latin, did you? I'm going to talk about this for just a couple of minutes. Now, Latin doesn't have the influence it had on society at one time, but it still has meaning today. Languages like French, Italian, and Spanish find their roots in Latin. As some of you know, I think it was pointed out in the introduction, I'm a Montrealer. So I could have done this presentation in French just as well as I could have in English. But I find that Italian and Spanish, I couldn't speak my way out of a paper bag, but I can read them because they're all derived from Latin. So if I read something in Italian or Spanish, subconsciously I translate it into French and then I get an understanding of what it's all about. So that's something about it. A lot of well-known Latin phrases are commonly used in the English language. I'm sure we've all heard many of them. And that kind of leads me into, I want to have a little bit of fun here for a second. Anybody in the room have a favorite Latin phrase that they might want to share with all of us?
Carpe diem.
Okay. Anybody else have one they might want to try?
Quid pro quo.
Yeah, that's right. That's a Latin one too. Quid pro quo. Absolutely. Okay. I want to share with you a few that I like. Some people say this is the motto of the United States: E pluribus unum, out of many, one. The United States Marine Corps, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. My hometown of Montreal, our official motto is Concordia Salus, which means salvation through harmony. My alma mater, McGill University, you may have noticed I'm wearing a McGill tie tonight. I'm very proud of the fact that I went to McGill. Our motto, which you'll see on our crest, is In Domino Confido, or In God We Trust. Here's another one. I'll bet you didn't know that our national motto is in Latin. Amare usque et mare, from sea even unto sea. And finally, my high school in St. Lambert, Chambly County High School. And a big hello to any CCHS people that are watching this video right now. You may recall that our high school motto is Mens sana in corpore sano, a sound mind and a sound body. Now, if you're thinking, why am I doing this? Oh, yes, I have one more. This is a great one. If you've had one of those days where life just isn't going your way, or you know what, if you're at a cocktail party and you need a little icebreaker and you want to start a conversation, I have the perfect line for you. Non bastardi carborundum, which means don't let the bastards get you down. So I think that's kind of a fun one. I want to have some fun with this presentation. Nobody likes to listen to dull, stale presentations, so I thought I'd have some fun with this. Now, in case you're wondering, why am I talking about Latin? This is supposed to be a discussion about networking. I have a very good reason for doing that. And it's this phrase right here. Concordia res parvae crescent. Let me give you a little background on what that's about. It actually comes from a Roman historian who was a contemporary of Julius Caesar. It's the national motto of Belgium, and Christopher Gears is a friend of mine from Happen. If he watches this, he's from Belgium. I'm sure he'll get a kick out of the fact that I brought something from Belgium into this. And as you can see, it's also been used by some other countries, such as Bulgaria, Haiti, the Netherlands, South Africa, and Malaysia. It's the original translation that Sallust had was "small states flourish by concord." There are some other translations, however, that I want to share with all of you. Unity makes strength, or in French, "l'union fait la force," which I think is the way it's interpreted in Belgium. And also in harmony, small things grow. But now here's the reason why I wanted to share this with all of you, because here's another translation that works for that. Work together to accomplish more. And I want to give you a little background behind that. This is from actually a very trashy movie called Poison Ivy 4, The Secret Society. I don't know, if you're lucky, you've probably never seen the movie, but I haven't. Well, the reason I say that is because this is about, it's a film about a group of women at a fictitious university in the United States, and believe me, these women will do anything to get ahead. Absolutely anything. But the reason why I wanted to keep this is one of the first time it's mentioned in the film is when they have an initiation ceremony for a group of new women that they've invited to join this club called the Ivies, and that's where the name comes from. And so what they do is during the initiation ceremony, the woman who's leading the group gets everyone in the room to say that together, Concordia res parvae crescent. And she translates it as work together to accomplish more. And I really think this is an excellent definition for networking, because if we combine our talents and work together on a common task, we're going to accomplish a lot more than if we did that alone. Or to put it another way, networking isn't about me, it's about we. It's combining our talents, working together. I think that's a very important component of networking, and I hope you all feel that way too. And sharing our skills and talents with others also means that we all benefit from each other's experience and knowledge, and it helps us achieve a successful outcome. So there's your little bit of Latin for the evening, and I hope you all enjoyed that part of it. Now let's talk about personal branding. I mentioned earlier that personal branding is a really hot subject these days, and I believe it's a very important element of networking. Now, as has already been mentioned, I'm the Opportunities Administrator for Happen. We're a group that's been around since 1991. We have helped thousands of senior managers and executives who were in career transition find their next job. And one of the things we tell our people at every Happen meeting is that when you're looking for your next job, you've got to think of yourself as a brand. With all due respect to your background, I know most of you in the room here are admin assistants. That's one example. You might be a finance person, you might be an engineer, you might be a manager. But you know, when you are in career transition, when you're looking for that next job, you've got to sell yourself. And a personal brand is a very important part of how you do that. But it's not just for job hunting. Personal branding is useful in every aspect of your life. We have a personal brand that we share with others many times a day. And just like other aspects of networking, there are a lot of definitions for personal branding. Does anybody in the room have one that they might want to share? I guess I've thrown you a little bit of a curve, haven't I? Okay, but that is a very important part of networking, so I wanted to share that with all of you tonight. Here's a couple more things, in particular some definitions of personal branding that I have found on the internet and also from a few other sources as well. Jeff Bezos, who's the CEO of Amazon, talks about a brand is what others say about you when you're not in the room. I like that, that's a good one. About.com, when I looked that up, one of the commentators who talked about personal branding defined it as the process of developing a mark that is created around your personal name or your career, which helps express and communicate your skills, personality, and values. I want to share this one. Paul Copcott is one of Canada's leading authorities on personal branding. And actually, he's based right here in Hamilton. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's spoken to us a number of times at Happen. This is Paul's definition of personal branding: a revolution in the way you manage your career or business. It's what is authentic to you, your unique promise of value. Now, what is personal branding and its role in networking? You may be sitting there or watching this and wondering why I'm doing that. Why should we use personal branding as a networking tool? There are some very good reasons for it, and I'm going to offer a few right here. We live in a highly competitive society. I probably don't need to say that. I think all of you in the room know that already. That's just the way life is in 2013. It's a very competitive world out there. And no matter what the environment, everybody wants to be number one. Nobody wants to be number two. Each of us is our own brand. How we present ourselves to others says a lot about us. So it could be our clothing, it might be our grooming, our tone of voice, our posture, our attitude. You know, one of the things we say at Happen is that a first impression really counts. Like if I had just walked up here after turning on my camcorder and didn't say anything for 10 seconds, you would have formed an impression of me right away. Maybe from perhaps, I mentioned I'm wearing a McGill tie tonight, or the way my posture was, or any number of those things. Those are very important elements of personal branding and when you're using that as a networking tool. And the more positive our brand is, the more people will want to network and associate with us. I think that's a really key statement because it helps link all this together. So if you still have some doubts about why I'm talking about personal branding as a networking tool, I hope that number 3 statement will help to clear that up. Here's some more things about personal branding and networking. Cultivating your personal brand can make you a more effective networker for many of the reasons that we talked about on the previous slide. A strong and definitive personal brand makes it easier to reach your goals, whether they are personal or professional. If your personal brand is impeccable, people will be attracted to you and talk about you in a positive way. That's also going to open up networking opportunities that you may not have found out about otherwise. Using personal branding as a tool in your own networking activities can make you number one in our competitive society. Think back to what I said on the last slide there. In 2013, we live in a very competitive world. Nobody remembers who finishes second, but everybody remembers who finishes first. So if you use personal branding as a tool, that can help ensure that you're going to win the gold medal, that you're going to be number one. Now, I want to talk about LinkedIn. I think I already asked this question of all of you, so I don't need to ask it again, but I know that I think most of you indicated that you are on LinkedIn. Now what about Facebook and Twitter and some of the others? Are people here involved in those as well? Most of you are? Okay, good. I'm glad, because it goes without saying that social media is playing a greater dynamic in networking all the time. I mean, we could talk for hours just about that. I want to share with you all some interesting facts and figures about LinkedIn. These are probably things you may not be aware of, but as I say, I wanted to have some fun when I was doing this presentation. You may not know this, but this month, May 2013, is the 10th anniversary of when LinkedIn began. It was launched in Mountain View, California, which is one of those Silicon Valley cities just near San Francisco, on May 6, 2003. So we're all here tonight just after the 10th anniversary of the founding of LinkedIn. It's been estimated that as of today, there are 225 million users of LinkedIn in over 200 countries around the world. I think that's fascinating. And here's another stat that I love. LinkedIn adds 2 new members a second. So let's suppose, if I've had this slide on the screen now for, let's say, 5 seconds. In that 5 seconds, combine it all around the world, 10 new people have joined LinkedIn. We've all been here now for, what, 2 hours, give or take? 120 minutes? Well, I'll let you all do the math, but that's several thousand people who have joined LinkedIn ever since we walked into this hotel tonight. And I think that's pretty spectacular. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. Here's another interesting one. There are about 1.5 million LinkedIn groups. I actually run several of them myself. One that I have is a taste of Montreal and Toronto. As I'm sure you realize, I'm far from the only ex-Montrealer in Southern Ontario. There are, depending on who you talk to, there are something like 500,000 to 1 million people who are former Montrealers now living in and around Toronto, and my group on LinkedIn taps into some of those. For those of you who like Canadian football, not just the Tiger Cats, our home team here in Hamilton, but the other cities across the country, I run a group called Friends of the Canadian Football League. So for those of you watching out there, if you're Canadian football fans, come and join us. You'll find us on LinkedIn. Here's some more stats about LinkedIn I thought I'd throw out. 81% of people, of LinkedIn users belong to at least one group. I talked about some of them on the previous slide. 42% of LinkedIn users update their profiles regularly. I don't know what they mean, how they define regularly. They might be talking daily, weekly, a couple of times a week, but I thought that might be interesting to throw out for people. There are 2.7 million business pages. 27% of their users do so with a mobile device, such as a smartphone or an iPhone or a tablet. 35% of LinkedIn users use the site every day. And in addition to English, LinkedIn is available in 16 other languages, including French, Spanish, German, Portuguese, Korean, Indonesian, and Malay. Now, if you're wondering why Chinese is not there, I understand they are trying to get into China. There's an equivalent to LinkedIn that's in China. And I found that rather weird when I was researching this, that somehow LinkedIn doesn't have an official presence in China. I don't know why, but maybe one day they'll get it. Yes?
Apparently China also has their own Facebook.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, some of those the other social networks, yeah, they do that. I found that very interesting. Now, I'm going to give you some tips for using LinkedIn. Now, in saying this, bear in mind this is just my perspective. If you talk to 50 experts about LinkedIn, you're going to get 50 different answers, and some of them are going to conflict with each other. So I'm going to talk to you all for a couple of minutes about how I use LinkedIn, and I hope these are some tips that you will find useful. First of all, keep your profile current and relevant. So in other words, be one of those 42% that do update it regularly. Go in at least once a week, I would say, and adjust your LinkedIn profile. Stay away from controversial subjects. So in other words, try to avoid things like religion or politics or sexuality. You know, those are no-goes, I think, in a lot of areas of our society. I think we all know that. We're all professionals here in the room tonight. I'm sure a lot of you watching us out there, you are as well. But you'd be surprised how many people avoid that. How many people wade into controversial waters on LinkedIn, and you got to be very careful about that sort of thing. I think that goes without saying. Be professional, courteous, businesslike at all times. LinkedIn is designed for business, for professional people, so it's important that you behave that way when you're on LinkedIn. Don't use the generic LinkedIn invitation. I would love to find the programmer from LinkedIn who said, how does it go? I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn. I would love to find that person and string them from the CN Tower. You know, because, it drives me bananas when people do that. It really does. Instead, I think if you're going to invite somebody to join your LinkedIn network, make it a personal one. And, you know, tell the person why you want to connect with them and offer the benefits. So let's suppose that, you know, those of you in the room tonight, I mean, Eva and I are connected on LinkedIn, but I know for, you know, the rest of you here, if you decide after you see this presentation you would like to connect with me, that'd be great. I'd love that. But don't just send me the generic invitation. Just say to me something like, "Hi Greg, I met you at the Association of Admin Assistants. I really enjoyed your talk. I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn." Something like that. Because then I know that you care. I don't want to be just a number in somebody's LinkedIn network. I want that person to really take an interest in me, and I want to take an interest in them. So that's why I always urge people to send a personalized invitation when they're going on LinkedIn. And be selective when you're inviting people. Make sure these are people that you know and trust. To me, I think this whole thing, it's all about quality, not quantity. My own LinkedIn network, as of today, I have about 2,900 people in my network. I could probably have 29,000 if I accepted every invitation, but the 2,900 that I have, A lot of them are good friends. They're people that I know and I trust. I know what they stand for. I know their values and they know mine. And I think when you're using LinkedIn, that's a very important consideration. Let me share just a couple of other tips about LinkedIn. Just as I said to you that you ought to be selective when you're sending out invitations to people, I think the same thing applies on the flip side too. When you accept invitations from people, there's kind of a raging debate within LinkedIn about that, because you do get people who are called lions, and I mentioned that here, LinkedIn open networking. And I think, as I just said a minute ago, that's why I'm really not a big fan of the lion concept. I don't want to connect with everybody. I would rather have a smaller network where I know the people, where I trust them, where I know what they believe in, they know what I believe in, and I'm comfortable working with them. So that's why I'm not a great fan of the lion concept. When somebody sends you an invitation, this is something that I do, and I recommend that everybody do this when they're on LinkedIn, and particularly if you don't know that person, if you've never heard of them before, take a look at their profile and then decide if there's a significant benefit in connecting with them. Because you know, even though you don't know them, if you look at their profile, you might find something that really lights it up for you. You may find some things in that person's profile that will say, hey, you know, I really like this person. I want to connect with him or her. So don't just write them off if you don't know them. Investigate them. Do your homework. And if you think it's worthwhile connecting with them, then by all means, click the accept button and have them join your network. Use your LinkedIn network to help others, because I believe that your LinkedIn network represents a great treasure trove of information, expertise, and advice. And if people want to tap into that pool for their benefit, let them do that. Over time, you will find that that all comes back to you. I'm going to talk about that a little more later on tonight, but I wanted to mention that within the context of LinkedIn. Now, I want to very quickly talk about some other social media and their role in networking. I think we all know there's a ton of social media sites out there. I mean, it's almost bewildering to think of the hundreds, if not thousands, of other networks out there. We all know the biggies are Facebook and Twitter, but there are others like ZoomInfo and Names, and there are several others. As I say, it's kind of dizzying. It's probably too many to mention here. Now, Facebook and Twitter, you know, it used to be that, you know, that Facebook was something where, you know, you could be a little more personal and let your hair down and have some fun if you wanted to. You know, I said earlier, don't stay away from controversial subjects. You could probably get away with that a little more on Facebook at one time, but that's really not the case anymore. Facebook and Twitter and all the other ones are really evolving into valuable business and networking tools, so don't discount them as networking tools. Just like LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter and a lot of these other social media outlets can really be a helpful tool for you. So from that perspective, the same things that I talked about just now with regard to LinkedIn, I think you should also use them as a code when you're on Facebook and some of the others as well. So in other words, maintain a professional image, avoid controversial subjects, and treat other users with respect and courtesy. And if you do that to them, I'm pretty confident they will do that to you as well. Just before I wrap up, I want to share a few final comments with everybody. Practice pay it forward when you network with others. People here know what I mean by pay it forward? Are most of you familiar with the term? Pay it forward basically means that if someone does a good turn for you, so let's suppose that someone says to your family, oh, I know a great place you ought to take your kids on vacation this year. Or somebody tells you about a restaurant that you want to take your family to for dinner. Or just any number of examples like that. Or one of the ones that I love that I've heard about happen before is in a drive-through like Tim Hortons. You know, you could pay for yours, but also pay for the next person in the line. So then they get to the checkout and they find, oh, somebody's already paid for mine. I'm going to pay for the next person, and so on and so on and so on. Pay it forward basically means that you don't necessarily have to repay that person for their kindness. Do it for somebody else. Pass it along. And I often say to people, what I love about pay it forward is when I do it for a total stranger. Someone that I've never met before and I'll probably never meet again. But I know that in doing a good deed for them, I'm making their day a little brighter. I'm making my day a little brighter. I can walk away from the encounter feeling good. I think that's what pay it forward is all about. And I encourage everybody to practice that. I think it's a wonderful way to operate in life. And as I say here, always help others, and don't necessarily ask for others to help you in return. Over time, and believe me, I know this from experience, that help will come back to you and in ways that you've probably never imagined or never thought of. Be a connector. Anybody here know Malcolm Gladwell? Social commentator. He's a Canadian, actually, I believe. If I remember correctly, I think his parents are Canadian and Jamaican. Malcolm Gladwell is a marvelous guy. We're based in New York, one of the world's best social commentators. He's written books like Outliers, The Tipping Point, What the Dog Saw. I know there's a fourth one. The title escapes me, though, what his other one is. Or maybe it's The Tipping Point, which is the one that I mentioned here. In The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell talks about a concept called connectors. And I think this is great. I'd love to do that. We can all be connectors because we all have contacts that we can use to help each other. Because, you know, one of the things we say to people that happen is that it's a two-way street. It's not just about how people can help you, it's also about how you can help them. And being a connector, as Malcolm Gladwell points out, we all have contacts we can use to help each other. So, you know, when people come to you for a networking need and with a networking need, use your contacts to find someone who can meet that need. You know, you may have someone in your LinkedIn network or Facebook or your circle of friends or colleagues at work. You know, so when you hear somebody has a need, you might go through your mental Rolodex and you think, hey, I know somebody who can help them out. So be sure to pass that along. Be a connector. I think that's very important. That can't be stressed enough. Some other final comments I want to share with all of you. You can never network enough. It's impossible. It just can't be done. You can never network enough. Every day, you get countless opportunities to network. It could be social events. It might be the drive-through at Tim Hortons. You know, I talked about that before. It might be the checkout line at your grocery store, or if you're at Chapters or a bookstore buying somebody, you might start up a conversation with someone else on the line, or maybe the cashier. And you never know. That can lead to networking opportunities. Volunteering in your community. That's another wonderful way that you can network with others, and it provides a lot of great networking opportunities. And you know, you just might meet some people who can help you achieve your success. Let's suppose, for example, you're volunteering